Here we go. Welcome to TM3 Impact. Tomas Martinez here. We are starting another amazing episode of TM3 Impact, and today we have Jeremy Jacobs. He is the owner of Float SA Wellness Center. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're kind of in the process of rebranding. So it was originally Float, but we're offering more services now. So it's Float Wellness Center.
Float Wellness Center. I love it. I'm glad you're here, Jeremy. TM3 Impact is brought to you by Luxury Home Magazine and Spanish Grove Academy, the best Spanish immersion pre-K in the city of San Antonio. So we're awesome to have those sponsors. And so today, Jeremy, we're just going to dive right in, my friend. I need to know your SA story. So we always start out as, how did you get to SA? Were you born here? How did you get to this amazing city?
So I grew up in Odessa, Texas, West Texas, the famous Friday Night Lights city, you know, the movie and the TV show book, Friday Night Lights. Odessa, Permian Panthers, all that. I went to the other school.
Okay.
I went to Odessa High School, and I was a weird kid. I was a punk rocker, so I had the mohawk and all that kind of stuff. So that wasn't the place for me. So I pretty much got out of there as quick as I could. Moved to San Marcos for Southwest at the time. Now it's Texas State, and got my business degree there. Fortunately, they had just started a studies in entrepreneurship program, and so I went through that. That was a pretty good crash course.
That's interesting. I did not know that Texas State had an entrepreneurial course. What year was this?
So I graduated in 03. So I was in that program 2002, 2003.
So what were they doing? Like at that point, I'm very intrigued by this because I had no idea that they had this. What were they doing back there? Was it, you were simulating kind of creating your business or creating ideas?
Then they had just gotten it started under Dr. Bell, and it was just one class at the time. I think it's a bigger program now.
Okay.
But it was a single class where they had local entrepreneurs come in and do talks, but then he also helped us develop business plans, and that was kind of the main focus.
Okay.
Obviously, the first step when you're creating a business, trying to get funding, you're putting together a business plan. So that was the main focus.
Okay.
And it was funny because I actually ended up opening the business that my group did the business plan for.
Really?
And
I got to know what the business was. You got to tell me. You got to tell me.
So it was a margarita machine rental business because I was in a college town, and so kind of ran across the idea. I bought a few used margarita machines and opened I think it was called Party Flavors.
Okay.
And that lasted about 6 months. I decided it was taking up too much time away from school. I was kind of a nerd, so I was really focused on doing well. I was under the impression that if you get good grades in college, it would actually lead to some kind of a better paying job, which is totally fake news. So yeah, I ended up selling it to somebody. I made a profit off of just opening it and selling it, so that was cool. I didn't lose any money, but
I'm curious. I got one question from that. So here you are in school, you create this business plan, you start the actual business, sell it, make money. But I'm curious, through that whole process, as you're going through it, what was the number one lesson you learned in starting that first business? Because you probably did some stuff younger, but like that, this is probably what was the biggest thing you learned in that time frame?
Yeah, I would say you have to have pure focus. If you're gonna open a business, I think. I don't remember who I was listening to the other day, but they were talking about how you got to focus on your main course. Too many entrepreneurs right now they're focusing on a lot of side dishes. They'll have a lot of things going, and they've got all these different ideas, and it was kind of like that with Float. I had to have pure focus and pure intent. Otherwise, you're most likely going to struggle and fail. And so I made the decision at the right point. I was like, well, I've either got to do this really well, or I've got to focus on school. And I chose to focus on school. But
Smart.
Yeah.
Okay, so get out of school, and then what? So you're at Texas State, and then where did you go?
So I didn't grow up with money. So I was, I had to take a year off of school at one point, and I went and sold cars to try and pay down some debt. So I was pretty much paying my way through school, and my folks did what they could. They were helping us out some, but I still had to kind of make my own way. So I got out of school. I just had to pay down some debts. I just went and got a regular job and got caught in that cycle of just trying to pay bills. And, without a lot of experience, I got into sales and eventually did really well with that. And that's where, I was able to put together the money for Float. Of course, we had to take out a loan, but it was also, they're going to want 20% down. So
right.
It was about 10 years of just that, just grinding it out. But I was very focused the whole time. I was trying to live within my means, pay off debt. So by the time we opened Float, we had pretty much all of our debt paid off except for student loans and mortgage, had the cars paid off, credit card paid down, all that kind of stuff, which is great because you don't know exactly what's happened. You can make all your plans, but if we had a higher overhead at home, we would have really struggled. But
yep.
we were basically able to live off of my wife's income initially, so we didn't have to take too much business money out of the business, put money back into marketing. And I think that was a huge part of our growth is I was able to limit what we were taking out of the business so that we could be successful. If I was requiring $7,000 a month paycheck, we would have failed really quick.
Yeah. So was it right after college? Did you come to San Antonio? Were you doing that working here, or was that what year did you come to San Antonio? Did you get here?
I got here about 2005. So
okay.
I graduated 2003. I worked some different jobs, and then one of those jobs brought me to San Antonio. I was just here. I sold everything from medical device to water treatment equipment, RVs, all kinds of stuff. I've had a crazy weird array of jobs, but
so take all those sales jobs because like as an entrepreneur, I was a teacher before all of this, right? I taught elementary education, so I didn't have any sense when I started Luxury Home Magazine of like selling. Now everybody who knew me was like, no, you were selling all the time, Tomas. Like, come on. But no, but really, like, so if you were to take all those sales jobs, what did you learn the most from that time frame of selling?
I think for me, it was, I don't know that there's day-to-day stuff that I can take away and use in the business. I think for me, it was bigger, like gaining the confidence, like I said, I was the kind of kid that I was different. I didn't grow up with this. I didn't grow up in a home where there was this idea of, my dad always encouraged me to kind of make my own way, but it wasn't necessarily exactly, the same path. So it was more building up confidence and being able to speak to people in a way where you're able to direct the conversation without being pushy. Because I'm not a pushy person. So it was kind of out of my nature to go into sales. But I figured out if you're kind and you're honest, that will end up working out for you, but you have to do it in a way where you can also be aggressive enough to, ask for the sale, those kind of things. And so it took me a while to find that inside of me, I think. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so we get to a point, you start paying down debt, and you decide, I want to start a float center. So like for most people, listen, I've floated before and I love it. It's like the best thing. And I've talked a lot about it with my friends, but where did you have your first float experience that even led to the idea of starting it?
So I basically heard about floating through Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah.
Joe Rogan's podcast it's funny. It's like one guy almost single-handedly created this, it's actually called the third wave of flotation therapy. Like the floating's been around since the late 50s, early 60s. The guy, John Lilly, that invented it basically. It just kind of existed in the laboratory for a long time.
Yeah.
And then, it actually got really popular in the 80s. Robin Williams floated. Even John Lennon credits the float tank for helping him kick heroin. There's a famous quote of him talking about that. So it got really popular in the 80s, and then it almost completely died out. There were a few float centers around back then, and then it went through a lull, and then I guess probably around 2005, it started to build, and then Joe Rogan starts talking about it on his podcast, and all of a sudden you've got this explosion where on the athletic side, athletes are starting to use it. Navy SEALs are using float tanks. All these different things came together, and so now we've had this third wave of float centers. I think we went from like 50 in the United States to probably close to 500 now in a period of 10 years. So, and it's interesting to see that. I've been kind of, I've been in the industry. We had the initial idea back in 2014.
Okay.
No, 2013. Yeah, I heard the podcast, and my wife and I, we drove up to Austin. There weren't any float centers in San Antonio. Yep. And so she has no idea what we're doing. She's just kind of going along with it. And we go to this float center, which was kind of a spa, but it was in a house. And so...
Sounds like Austin.
Yeah. You come into our place, it's this beautiful spa, but, we go into this house, and we're trying to figure out if we're in the right place, because we're expecting, like something in a strip center, but then we're driving through this neighborhood. And so you go in, and they're doing massage on the ground floor, and then you have to go upstairs into a bedroom for the float tank. And
they had a float tank on the second floor of a house? Oh my God.
And you have to, you actually go down the hall. There's just like a beaded curtain for privacy at the top of the stairs, and you go down the hall, and you go into this like residential bathroom, which was not renovated at all to be commercial. It just looked like a small bathroom in off of a bedroom to shower off, and then you walk back down the hall to get in your float tank. So, we didn't know anybody. It was our first time floating, and those folks do a great job there. They're still there, and so I floated, and my wife floated, and it was really funny because she was just kind of going along for the ride.
Did you even tell her what you were doing? What this was? Like
I kind of tried to describe it to her, but
you can't. That's true. I got you.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, she's like, "Well, we're floating in water. I don't understand." Yeah. And so it's funny because she's pretty chill, and I'm super hyperactive mind, probably like ADD somewhere in there. And so I struggled a little bit my first float, and she just got shot out to outer space. So she comes out.
Her first float.
Yeah, and she just, she can barely walk. She just she actually thought she fell into the float really easy, because you go into this super deep relaxed state.
Yeah.
But depending on where you're starting out mentally, it's either really easy to drop into that super relaxed state, or some of us take 2 or 3 float sessions. True. Yeah. And so she dropped into it really easy, and she literally thought she was just like floating through a rainforest. Like, she got sent off to a whole other world, which it's fun working at a float center because we get to hear these stories about people, the visions that they see in there. There's all kinds of cool stuff that can happen in a float tank. So she comes out and she's super excited. I'm like, I didn't quite get there, but I can see how it could be.
You saw the potential.
A great tool, yeah.
So just so people understand this, so this is a tank right here. So just explain basically if you were like talking to someone at a bar, they're like, "Hey man, you own a float tank?" Like,
I have
give the basic idea of this.
I have my float tank elevator pitch description down, because it's a really difficult concept to get across all of the ideas that's happening. But the number one main thing is it's not regular water. So people are usually like, why would I pay to float in water? The solution is super saturated with Epsom salt. Okay. So and Epsom salt's not actually a salt. That's the other funny thing, is it's a mineral. It's a totally natural thing that's mined out of the ground. And Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. And I'll explain why that's important. But either way, we make the water so dense. Like, that tank takes 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt to make you buoyant.
Wow.
So we're looking for a density greater than the Dead Sea. So when you create that, you can lay back on the water and you float without any effort. You're like a cork. You just pop to the top of the water. And then we heat the solution and the air to the exact temperature of your skin, which is really important because we call it floating because we're kind of, as an industry, kind of trying to rebrand it. In the past, and what Rogan talks about it is sensory deprivation.
Right.
Which is an important idea because what we're trying to do is remove all external stimulus to the body. So on top of you being completely buoyant, you're kind of escaping gravity. The water being the same temperature as your skin, you actually kind of lose the sensation of the water at some point. And so now we've taken away tactile stimulation. And then our tanks start out with lights and music just to kind of help you settle in, but the music will fade out, and when you're ready, you click the lights off. And now we've created an environment where there is practically zero stimulation coming into the body, and the end result is that we're able to shut off the amygdala. So the part of our brain, you hear about fight or flight. We are, as a society, overstimulated at this time. We've got cell phones, social media, billboards, radio, all of this stimulus coming at us. And so to go into a place where there is practically no stimulus at all is incredibly healing. And they've done some amazing research recently where they're seeing it's a great tool to manage stress, anxiety, all those kind of things. So you get all of these benefits mentally, but then also physically. The Epsom salt, again, it's magnesium sulfate. It's relatively understood in the industry that you're absorbing magnesium from the water, which is used in 365 metabolic processes. So it's a really important mineral in our body, but 68% of people are deficient in magnesium. There's some people in the industry that feel like we need more research to understand that aspect of it, but that seems to be one of the things that's working in the float tank. So you've got kind of the mental and physical benefits that you get from it.
Okay, so I'll break in here. So I had my first float, it was last year, and I got hooked. Like I absolutely loved it. And my first float was a little awkward because it's like, what do I do with my hands? I didn't know where to put my hands when you're floating there. Second float, I got a clue and I figured out a couple of cool spots. I started using the little pillow, that little thing, which I loved because I didn't know what it was. But then I got into this rhythm where I really enjoyed it. But as I think one of the things is there's do's and don'ts, right? And the cool thing is that a great center is going to explain that to you. But so now that we know about the tank, and I love you sharing that, I love this. So now you have your first experience and then you go, hey babe, let's open up a business. Like, I mean, these tanks aren't cheap, to get something like this. So where did the transformation go from there to now let's open one?
Well, we were in a process of, we wanted to open a business, and so we were kind of like looking at different ideas. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I think I was 12, and I was selling candy in the classroom to other kids, and then I had my lawn business when I got a little bit older. I was going out and mowing lawns and other things. So I've always been of that mindset. And I was, the whole idea, before we knew about floating, we were already, like I said, laying the groundwork, trying to pay off debt, saving up as much cash as we could. So we were kind of looking, and I heard about this concept. And then, of course, I realized there's not a float center in San Antonio. I'm hearing about it, and I'm like, that was already, like before I even floated, there was already that like little seed planted in my brain. You're always looking at, where's there opportunity when you're an entrepreneur. So I was like, obviously I need to experience this and understand it before we do anything. So then, we drive up there. So on the car ride back, I was like, we need one of these in San Antonio. And she's like, yeah, let's, we were both all in after that first.
Well, after her outer space ride, she's all in.
Yeah. It was great because if she had not enjoyed it, then that would have been a big struggle, but she loved it. So yeah, she was all in from that moment. I mean, she was talking about like, we either need to make enough money where we can have one of these things in our house, or we need to open a float center in San Antonio. So
I love it.
Yeah, and I'm super fortunate. My wife's amazing. talked about it early on. We got married really fast. We dated for like 5 months and then got married.
Love it.
We're about to hit our 7-year anniversary, so it's been great. But she's always been amazingly supportive, and I think I'm really fortunate for that, because I know that's a struggle for a lot of people. Where if your spouse isn't all in on your concept, then that's going to create a lot of friction at home and in that business. So she's always, and she's been, at times when we first started, she's working 5 days a week and then coming and working in the float center on the weekends. So she's amazing. But so then I started doing more research, because my other concern initially after experiencing it was, is this a fad? Is this something that's going to come and go? Or does it provide real benefit to people to where they're going to continue to come back because of what it's doing for them?
Right.
And that was an important distinction for me, because you see, especially in the spa industry, you'll see certain trends come and go, weight loss, things come and go. And so I started digging into the research, and I found there were some really great studies done on flotation therapy in the 80s, and then there's some modern studies that are even better. And it showed that there's a huge benefit for stress relief, anxiety, muscle recovery, all kinds of different things. So I was like, okay, this is legit. Like we can do this, and it's going to be a sustainable business.
Right. So how long did that take, that research? We talking, is this, a couple of months, or we like a year? That
initial part before I decided, I'm very much like, I'm going to decide something, I'm going to go all in, and I'm very stubborn.
Yeah.
But it's good and bad, And so once we decided, we decided we had to obviously put together a business plan. So I would say that whole business plan phase was a good 6 months.
Okay.
And we're both working full-time jobs at the time. So I also started working with SCORE, which is a nonprofit. They've got a group here in San Antonio, but they're all over the country. They basically provide free entrepreneur mentorship. And the folks that do this are generally retired professionals. And I can't say enough. I mean, I got super lucky. My mentor, Chris Hughes, is this amazing guy. He worked in as a CEO for big businesses, and he's retired. And so I started meeting with him weekly or every 2 weeks, and he was helping me with my business plan. And
totally free.
Yeah, it's totally free. It's an amazing program.
Yeah, we need to put a link out for that. That's awesome.
I'm blown away at how many resources there are in San Antonio that are not being utilized by entrepreneurs. So we've got SCORE, we've got the SBA, which does free classes. We've got the SBDC, Small Business Development Center at UTSA. And then there's a few other new organizations, Maestro, which focuses on assisting minorities and women. So there's Lift Fund. There's all kinds of different tools. And I'll go to some of these classes. I went to a class, I think it was free. It was down at the main library. And I can't remember if it was SCORE or SBA that put it on, but they've got this gentleman speaking who does consulting for major companies, and he charges hundreds of dollars an hour. He's doing this class for free, to support these organizations. It was me and one other person at this event.
Only two people.
And she left, and so it was just me. So I got a one-on-one with this guy for an hour to talk directly about my business, which would have cost me, a couple $100. And so there's all these tools, and I know every city's probably got different organizations, but SBA, SCORE will generally be in most major cities.
I think it's real important at this point we have entrepreneurs, we have realtors, we have, different people that listen, but I think it's real important for people to understand that if you truly want to run a business, if you truly want to be an entrepreneur, one of the biggest pieces, and you could talk to this, is you got to educate yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got my degree in business management, but honestly, that, 10 years later isn't helping me a lot. I'm sure there's a foundation in there somewhere with, you take accounting classes and marketing and this and that. I'm sure there was some of that knowledge left, but, I've continued to read some different books, but probably the most useful is that, all of these tools that are available here, you have to be humble. There's people that have done these things before. So I also went out and I called float centers. I called around and I was like, how did you pick your location?
Yeah.
And that's why we chose. If you go to our center, it's not in a fancy strip center. It's actually, it's in a part of town that it's not a bad part of town, but it's not something where you would find a high-end spa.
Right.
But when I spoke to people that actually run float centers, they said, keep your overhead low because it's going to take you a while to build up your business. And this is a destination business. People will drive. I get people that drive in from Corpus because there's no float centers in South Texas.
Wow.
And so I get people driving from all over the city, different areas, to come to a spot. You're not going to be in a highly visible area. You're going to pay the rent to be in a highly visible area, but that's not going to draw people into floats.
Right.
People aren't going to see my float sign, on 410 and decide to walk into my business.
True.
So you have to spend money where it's going to help you be successful. So, and that was kind of, I think one of the best things that we did was the research ahead of time.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this a little bit. There's certain times, certain types of businesses where you need to move quickly.
Yeah.
And I know maybe in the technology industry right now, things are happening really fast, and maybe you do need to get your idea out there and you need to start beta testing and all that kind of stuff to see what's working. But for this, I knew that it was going to be a huge financial investment because we have to build out the center. We have to soundproof the tank rooms. The equipment's really expensive. So I knew, and like I said, I didn't come from money, so we couldn't make any mistakes up front. So I spent a lot of time writing the business plan. I spoke to people that manufactured float tanks. I spoke to people that run float centers. I was on a Facebook group for people that run centers, and I'm there asking questions. I've got mentors. SCORE, I'm meeting with them every single week to make sure I'm thinking of everything possible. And so putting in that work ahead of time, if you're going into a business that you don't currently work in, you need to understand every single facet of that business before you start. It's like if you're going to open a bar and you've never worked in a bar, then you need to figure that out. You either need to go work in that industry, or you need to really sit down and understand everything about supplies and ordering and managing and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you could possibly make mistakes up front that you're going to have to live with the life of your business. So,
right. Or like most businesses, what do they say? It's like, 9.5 out of 10 fail, right? So you speed up the process to your own failure. Now, you said this on the phone that I thought was really interesting, is that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you kind of were like looking at this as a ready, aim, fire. Explain that, for people, as we were talking. I love that idea.
Yeah. So at certain times, people will, they'll do it a little bit out of order. They'll ready, fire, aim. And I've actually heard I don't remember who it was. It was either in a book or in a podcast. Those get all blurred together for me. But somebody was saying that like sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you just need to go for it. And that's true for entrepreneurship. If you just sit around and I did this for a while, I had lots of ideas and I never pulled the trigger. And sometimes you'll never feel ready. But at the same time, depending on the industry, like I said, with the investment that we had to make, we really had to make sure that we were doing everything correctly because we're creating an experience, and it's really difficult to provide sensory deprivation. It seems like a simple concept, but if you want to soundproof a room properly, you have to build the walls a certain way. And if you want to provide a ambiance that people are going to feel comfortable in, you have to spend time really thinking about the way things flow. I mean, we had meeting after meeting, hours of just talking about lighting because when somebody comes into our center, it's bright and open and big and we're smiling, and it's that first impression. But then when you come back, we're going to start to lower the lights, and we're going to actually lower the volume of our voice. So we're going to speak slower because we're helping you we're preparing you to go into a place where you're going to be quiet and calm. And
Right.
so that doesn't happen right away. So I even floated at a float center in Austin, Texas called Zero Gravity Institute.
Oh, yeah.
And the owner there became our mentor as well, because they created this process, and I was able to, speak with them and understand, like, what are all the elements that go into really creating a full experience. Like most float centers, you just go back to the tank room. They say, here's your tank, you shower off, you get in, and they'll just leave you to do that. Mm. What we do is you come in, we greet you by name. We take you back to a locker room. You put on a nice, comfortable robe. We've got your name on the locker. And so you're already feeling special. Mm-hmm. You're leaving those work clothes off in a locker, which I think is important. You want to leave behind whatever it is that you're trying to get away from.
Yep.
And then you're going to go to a massage chair. You're going to get 15 minutes in a massage chair. It's complimentary, so that you have a chance to clear your head and decompress. Because most of the time they're either coming out of traffic, they're just leaving work. People have daily lives. They have screaming kids and all that stuff. So if you're going directly into a float tank, you're going to spend half of your hour or 90 minutes decompressing. So we're going to help you do that ahead of time. And so you get the massage chair, and then we take you back to your tank room. We have a very thorough explanation, which has evolved a lot since we opened, where we describe everything that you might have a concern about. And then we let you have your float session. We have a place where you can have tea. We actually have an art gallery that features local artists to make it really interesting when you're relaxing afterwards. So the point of all that is we did a ton of research to create this experience and build our center and do all these things so that we knew that it was going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And, last year we won Best Place to Get Pampered in the San Antonio Current and
Nice.
Best Med Spa. You look at the reviews, and we've been extremely successful, but I think a lot of that goes back to laying the groundwork and making sure that we're providing an amazing experience.
I love that. And so, okay, so you it'll be 2 years. Are y'all celebrating 2 years?
We just had our 2-year anniversary in November, so we're a little over.
Congratulations, that's awesome. So now that you've run the business for 2 years, and for entrepreneurs out there, I think, and I talk about this, I had Ben Hubbard from Champion AC Lead Hub. He was here 2 weeks ago, and I think there's this idea, and it's almost like this. I don't know, like, people get the rose-colored glasses, like, well, in year 2, it should be easier, right? It should be easy, right? And so even though you celebrated 2 years, I think it's important that entrepreneurs need to understand, and this is the question, is that, yes, there are things that do become easy, but it's still tough. And talk to that idea of running a business is still tough even at year 2.
Yes. The challenges just change. You've got different, for me, it's been a different focus. Initially it was, let's create these systems, because this isn't a franchise. Let's create these systems so that there are fewer things that I have to concern myself with during the day. So I would say that was our first year, creating an employee handbook and creating procedures so that our employees know exactly what they're supposed to be doing at all times during the day. And that's, of course, always a struggle. We talked about that a little bit. Employees, I've actually been pretty blessed. I've got some amazing people, a few that have been with us since the very beginning, and a few that have been with us for a little over a year that have allowed me to step away from some of those roles. And so my focus has really changed. I was in the business a lot. I was working a lot of shifts, doing different things. But something that we also did is the very first meeting I had with Chris Hughes at SCORE was he told me to read The E-Myth.
That's a great book.
And that is probably one of the most important things, probably the most important information that I received before opening my business, because it really changed my focus.
Yep.
Because I'm a hard worker. I've been working since I was, 12 years old. I've had some dirty, grimy jobs. I don't mind putting in work and doing the dirty work, but with entrepreneurship, you have to create your own success. And the idea behind the E-Myth is you want to do what you enjoy or what you love about your business. And also, you need to run your business from the beginning the way that you visualize it being 10 years down the road.
Right.
And so I know a lot of people that run float centers that just do everything themselves, but you can get stuck in a pattern of, I'm going to clean all the tank rooms, I'm going to greet every person. That doesn't leave you a lot of time and space for growth.
Right.
And so my focus initially is I'm going to put us out there and hire employees, even though it may stretch the payroll might stretch our cash a little bit, but allow myself room to go out and do events and market and do all the things that are going to allow us to grow and be successful. So I created a lot of space for myself to do that. And once we got that ball rolling, where we were really putting more money into marketing, and I was a little bit too gun shy up front, honestly. I should have invested a little bit more
on the marketing piece?
on marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But once I saw, if I put X number of dollars in, I'm getting these customers back. And once I felt comfortable doing those things myself, Facebook marketing, Google, all those type of things, we really started to grow. So this last year, we grew 40% from 2017 to 2018.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
What do you think was the number one reason? Why did you grow by 40%?
Marketing, for sure.
Marketing in terms of dollars spent, or actually being able to leave the center and go like face to face meet people?
I didn't get to do as much of that as I'd like. We've really struggled with, we've got a really great core group of employees, but I have really struggled to find the last few pieces to where I'm not on the schedule for any time. So I'm still working in the float center more than I would like to. We're just having it. I'm very, very particular about the experience that we provide. So for the person that greets you and walks you through that experience, they have to love floating. They have to be really kind, and they have to be concerned about every single customer is coming in there to work on something. That we get veterans with PTSD that we're helping try to move past that trauma. That's really, really important work, and we've been very successful, and it's been probably the most rewarding thing that's happened at Float is seeing that change for people. But then also, you get the soccer mom then that's there to pamper herself. Maybe she needs to see that kindness for a different reason. But you have to look at every single person as they're there to heal from something, and you have to be in a place where you can provide that care every single time. And so I'm very particular about the people that we have work those positions, and even the cleaning. Like, it's extremely important for our place to be just pristine all of the time, and I will not let that slip. So I'll be there doing it myself if that's what it takes. But my real goal is to have systems in place and the right people to where I don't have to. Like, this place runs like a clock, whether I'm there or not. And we're basically there. It's just finding those last few people that can help us do that. But this last year, I wasn't able to get out and do as many events as I would like, but I started working from home. I get distracted really easy. And when I'm in the business, I'm helping out, answering phones. I get really distracted. So I started working at home more and just sitting down and really focusing on our Facebook marketing, Instagram, Google, even trying out different things. We tried out Snapchat, Pinterest, all kinds of different things, working on the website. I built our website and trying to optimize that money that was spent. So I think what allowed us to be successful last year was, yes, putting more dollars into it, but also tracking and making sure that those dollars are being spent well.
There you go.
And we look at, I'm able to, we've got landing pages and we've got analytics about our website, but I'm also looking at each new client has to fill out a waiver, and we ask them, how did you hear about us and why are you here? Right. So that we can continue to improve. And so I'm tracking feet in the door for our business. We can get a ton of, Snapchat got us a ton of hits on our website. It got very few feet in the door. So I pulled out of that, and Facebook has worked pretty well. It's been a struggle the last 12 to 18 months because of the way their algorithm is constantly changing. But we're constantly looking at, okay, when we're spending money on this, is this actually translating into business? Because otherwise it doesn't matter. I don't care about website traffic.
Right.
I care about new clients coming in the door to experience what we offer.
Right. That's interesting. I love that. So a little bit of money in, but tracking. The ROI is critical.
Absolutely.
It's ROI. So now you've had your business 2 years. You know, you're sitting here. You had your first float back in 2013. It's 2019. You're going into your third year. If an entrepreneur were sitting in front of you and just they're like, okay, man, like, how did you do it?
Yeah.
Like, what's the secret? You know, they all want the secret sauce, right? All the millennials want the secret. They want the pill that's going to give them the business so that they could go on Instagram in front or whatever. Right? But what would you tell that entrepreneur right now?
Yeah.
Like, listen, give me 1 minute. I need to tell you this. Go.
Grit is a huge part of that.
Okay.
Because we had our struggles. Like, it was not easy, especially being in a place where we were both working full time. It took us, if you look at that timeline, it did take us 3 years to actually get open. We had, it was funny. I thought the hardest part was going to get the money. Is we spent 6 to 9 months, somewhere around there, writing the business plan. That business plan was awesome.
Okay.
Honestly, I have to say, it was really good.
Yeah.
So the first bank we went to, we got approved for our loan.
Whoa.
For all the money that we wanted.
Wow.
Like I said, we had to put a big chunk of change down to secure that loan, but I was like, okay. And I had this idea in my head. Now that's the hard part. Now it's just, we got money. So it's just going to go from here.
That's funny.
There's always going to be some sort of an obstacle.
Right.
And it's funny. And like I said, I hear from these folks that are opening float centers, and it runs in different places. Some people have a really hard time getting funding, and then everything else runs smooth. Yeah. We ran into a really weird obstacle, actually finding a location. And it turned out our real estate broker was sleazy, and he was negotiating terms to benefit himself and not us. So we actually took a serious look at about 8 or 9 different locations, and they all kept falling through. And I hadn't actually worked a brick and mortar deal. I'd had some small businesses. It was always out of the house or something like that. So I didn't know commercial real estate. And that's where I should have educated myself a little bit more. But this guy came recommended to us from another business owner. So I kind of trusted him a little too much going in. And I finally figured out after about a year of working with this guy that he was the reason that all these deals were falling through. He was kind of whispering in our ear, well, you're a new business. It's a new concept, so these landlords aren't comfortable, this is so that. Turns out he was trying to get these longer contracts with him getting a higher percentage. And
they didn't want to agree. Right.
There were bad terms.
But he was blaming you.
Yeah, and he was telling us it was me. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, I guess just the landlords are being really cautious right now. And, we ended up, and I won't get into the other stuff. But so eventually I figured out what he was doing. Yeah. I negotiated the deal for the place that we're currently at. And it's probably for the best, because I love where we're at. Yeah. It was a really great deal. I ended up just negotiating it myself. And it worked out, but that was the hurdle that we had to figure out. We lost a year. The great thing is, you always want to be working. We were building the groundwork for what allowed us to be successful later. And what I mean by that is we got our Facebook page going. We started building followers. We started building an email list. We were going out and doing events. And I think that's really important. If you're opening this business, get yourself out there as early as you can. Social media is a huge part of every business now. Yeah. And it's a snowball effect. That snowball is going to be really small at first. It's going to be your family and friends that you ask to like your business page. Yeah. And then you've got to add followers and likes and all that stuff. And it's going to move really slow. That going from 600 followers to 800 probably took us, 3 or 4 months. Right. And then you just keep growing it from there. But it's a snowball, so you have to start that early. So by the time you actually open your business, you've got enough followers for that to be effective. So we started doing that early on. Prior
to ever opening the doors?
2 years before we were open.
Wow. And so you didn't even have a building.
Right. We didn't know where we were going to be, but the first thing we figured out was the name and the branding. I knew that, we were throwing around this concept that, down the road, we may have multiple locations. We might decide to franchise, who knows? So it's really important to have really consistent branding, marketing up front. So we got the name and everything sorted out. And then we just started pushing all that because we didn't know how quickly it was gonna move. And it was really fortunate because that 2 years of social media and gathering emails and all that kind of stuff, we jumped off and we were doing 300 floats a month out the gate. Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's rare in this industry, I realize now, but I see people opening their center and then starting their marketing. I'm like, well, where do you think the first people are coming from? You know?
The sign doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Because people don't truly understand. And that's what I'm hoping that with this particular podcast, that people will, number one, understand what floating is, understand it a little better, which I think you did a great job describing it. But also for entrepreneurs to understand is that, look, get out in front and start beginning the process of marketing what you want to do. I love that. So you have a millennial here, they're starting a business, it's grit, right?
Yeah.
But the pre-marketing is really important, it sounds like.
Right.
I love that.
And you need to love what you do because it's going to get really hard at some point. Like I said, you're always going to have obstacles along the way.
Yeah.
Do something that you are passionate about to the point where, because I'll tell you, like, it was around the 7th or 8th location around a year in where I was sitting there like, maybe this isn't going to happen. I was really, I was extremely frustrated because, we're sitting here, we've got this loan, and I don't know when that's going to go away.
True.
And I'm just sitting here, I'm ready to get this going. I'm excited, I'm passionate, and I just can't make it happen. And I couldn't see the obstacle in front of me. So, and I almost wanted to give up. I was talking to my wife and I was just really frustrated. I was angry. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if this is gonna happen.
Right.
And it was funny. I was listening to Gary Vee, and he said something that really stuck with me because I've always seen myself as an entrepreneur. Yeah. Like I said, I've had small business stuff before, but he said, if you don't actually do it, then you're not an entrepreneur. And so I had this idea of it was part of who I am, it still is. It's part of my personality. And you know how you see yourself as this person or as this thing. So I see myself as an entrepreneur, and all of the ideas. For me, it was never about money. It was about creating something. Yeah. And so you see yourself as this person. But he was like, you're not that. Like, and he talks about, you had the idea for Uber. It doesn't matter. You didn't create Uber. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm nobody in my head, until I actually do this. So I heard that and I was like, I gotta like grit my teeth and make this happen somehow. And so, fortunately with my background, I had that stick-to-itiveness or whatever you want to call it to force it to happen. Sometimes you just have to force it to happen and it's going to be incredibly difficult. And then you're going to get open and you're going to have all these other trials, like there's nobody coming in to fix my equipment. I had to learn how to repair a UV light system. Take apart a motor that runs the pump for our tanks. I wear 100 different hats between manager, business owner, marketer, tank repairman, salt cleaner, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's why I say you've got to love what you do because it's going to get really, really hard. And if you don't love it, you're just going to hate your life. Yeah. And it's going to drive you crazy. Yeah, I get that. Okay, my man. Well, listen, I've got 2 more questions. Okay. One of them is the lucky number that you picked. These are those are the 10 questions, right? That we're going to save that one for the last question. But this comes from Tools of Titans. This is Steve. Tim Ferriss. He wrote this book, and he basically came up with 11 questions. And I typically ask at least one question to every guest because I really like the book, and I love the questions. They're very thought-provoking. So this question is, in the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life? And for me, what I'll tell you is it's on my side, I think for the biggest thing in the last 5 years has been running. I've started running. I ran my first marathon. I've done a bunch of halves. And so running has been a habit that has massively improved my life. Tell me something for you, belief, behavior, habit. Mindfulness.
Okay.
I mean, it's, of course, I run a float tank center. It's all about meditation, mindfulness, but one of the things I love, why I fell in love with the float tank, like I said, I didn't fall in love with it my first float. I actually it was challenging for me the first time.
Yeah.
I didn't just go into that really deep meditative state, but I looked at it as a tool. I heard the things that people were saying about it, and I've always had a hard time with getting distracted and staying focused and all of these different things. And so the float tank helped me understand what it means to be mindful and how to practice meditation, because I wanted to have more control over my thoughts and my mind. And it's funny because meditation, the concept of meditation felt really inaccessible to me. Like, it felt frustrating. And, I probably just didn't have the understanding of what it really is, because you're not really truly like clearing your head of all thoughts. It's not focusing on an individual thought and letting that affect you in the same way. It's moving past that. So after getting, I've probably got 60, 80 floats under my belt. The float tank has showed me what it's like to be mindful, so I can be in a situation that's stressful, or just be driving in the car and feel really anxious or stressed. I am running a small business, so I can just stop and be present and clear my head and take deep breaths and just be purely focused on the moment, which has really had a huge impact on just general happiness. If you can stop that moment of panic or stress or anxiety in its tracks by just doing a really simple, like 1 minute mindfulness practice or whatever, that can have a huge impact on just, health and happiness.
Oh, absolutely. And just simply from the fact of running a business, there's always going to be a fire. I tell you, there's something that's going to come up. And if you have this ability to pause and just sit for a moment and go, wait a minute, just let myself breathe. A lot of times that fire will not seem as bad. I love that. That's a great one. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really easy to just jump from one thing to the next. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs have that like mindset that I just always have to be working and being effective. But you have to take care of your mind. It's almost like, athletes are not working out 24/7. They're taking recovery days. You have to, and your mind works the same way. You have to give it some space to just catch up with your thoughts. One thing I say about the float tank is, I'll go in there and I'll have things that are rattling around my head, and this could be a way somebody impacted me. Like maybe I felt like I was wronged by somebody. And sometimes that idea will rattle around in your head for days, weeks, months. And I've noticed if I stop and I'm quiet for 1 hour in the float tank, I can get to the end of that thought. It's funny, you'll have these thoughts and they will rattle around in your head because you never stopped to take the time to finish that thought. And generally the conclusion of that thought is really simple. It's like, well, they didn't intend for that statement to impact me that way. Their intention wasn't negative, so I shouldn't feel hurt by that. Or it could be a marketing idea or whatever. I come up with the best ideas in the float tank, and that's another thing that's amazing for it. It doesn't have to be this, I'm going to go in and zone out. It could be, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to come up with 10 great ideas for marketing or whatever else. I've been wanting to focus on entrepreneurs to get them into the float tank.
Listen,
they're the hardest people to get to stop and just be present.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And what I'll tell you is, I like to do talks and speeches, and I actually sat in the tank and I literally went through an entire speech, and I came up with the idea, and then I went to the next idea, and then literally I built the speech while I was in the tank, just completely in my mind. It's one of my best, and I feel like I really enjoyed that one. But in terms of just the reflection, look, I'll tell every entrepreneur, if you don't have a journal, if you're not reflecting on what's going on, you're missing a huge opportunity to grow. I do a journal every year, and I do the bullet journal where I have literally the entire journal. I have what I call like my contents, table of contents. So I literally have it page numbered. I can go back and find exactly where that note is.
That's cool.
But the bullet journal system, it's nothing new. It's just something that I saw on the internet from a buddy who told me about it. But this reflection is powerful.
Right.
Because sometimes you'll get in moments where you're like, man, like, how did this happen? And then when I go back and write about it, I'll realize when I go inward instead of outward, like as entrepreneurs, sometimes we only want to focus outward.
Right.
We don't want to go inward. But when I go inward, I realize like, well, I blew this opportunity. I did not train them properly. And you realize where you dropped the ball. And that is huge.
That's growth.
You know what I mean? That's growth.
That's the difference.
Okay, last question. This is the doozy, man. Now you picked number 7. So these are the 10 questions that my main man Gabe behind the camera came up with, and man, you got a good one.
Okay.
All right, brace yourself. All right. So this is the last question for our podcast here. Now this is deep. Now think about this. Would you prefer to lose all memories that you have right now? Right? And then you just start over, okay? Or never be able to make any new memories from this point.
Oh, wow. That's a really tough question.
That's a tough one. He told me this morning. I was like, whoa.
You know, part of what I think about, so I turned 39 2 weeks ago.
Oh, snap. Happy birthday.
Yeah, it's so funny to me when people don't like to talk about their age.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, it's a fact you can't change for
That's
one
right.
thing, but also I loved my 30s. 30s were awesome. I was so much smarter, so much more intelligent, and you make all your mistakes in your 20s, and you learn from them, and you live a better life in your 30s. So those millennials, young entrepreneurs, I guess millennials are in their 30s now too. What is it?
Yeah.
Generation Z, like, don't be afraid of that. But so considering that, I think that I feel like as an optimist, life's only going to get better. And I hated high school.
Yeah.
I was a weird kid in a weird place. I was in the middle of nowhere. So I've had a great life up till now, but I would say forget the past and look to the future. I think is the only way to answer that for me.
I like that. That's good. That's deep, man. I like that. Well, listen, Jeremy, this has been awesome. I think if you're an entrepreneur, this is a podcast you need to hear. This is a podcast you need to know about. And so you need to hear this one and hear what Jeremy did to start his business. And I love the fact that you had a business plan. You thought the biggest hurdle was money, right? And then boom, you got the money first bank, which most entrepreneurs, trust me, that doesn't happen. So those entrepreneurs out there, realtors out there, please share this podcast. There is somebody that's going to hear that is going to learn something new. And so Jeremy, we really appreciate you being here. Tell everybody how they can find you and how they can set up a float, because if you're hearing this, you need to float. So tell them how they can do that.
Yeah, if you're not in San Antonio, find a float center. They're all over the country now. Every major city is going to have one. But we are, so we're here in San Antonio, Texas. The website is floatsa, like sanantonio.com. You can book floats from there. We also do massage therapy and infrared sauna. So that's kind of why we're kind of going toward the idea of a wellness center.
Smart.
We're thinking about expanding right now. Our neighbor just moved out at our current spot, so we might be taking over a little bit more space. So we'll see about that. Maybe I'll come back and talk to you about if that happens, how that went, because I'm nervous about it, honestly. It's a little bit scary, but either way, floatsa.com. You can book and read all about what we do there.
Yeah, awesome. And then phone number, if they call directly, what's the
210 562-3310. And you can call and book appointments as well.
Book right there. Okay, I'll be calling soon, my man. I need to get a float in. My wife's out of town. As soon as she gets back, I need to make that happen.
Right on.
Jeremy, thank you for being on TM3 Impact,
Thank
my
you,
man.
brother.
Congratulations.
That was fun, man.
Take care.